Well, greetings, YouTube. It is good to be back. It's been a while since I did a review here on the podcast, and that is because I was in the Army for a relatively short time. Those of you that didn't watch my previous video, I got a medical discharge while in basic. Had some medical issues when I got there, and unfortunately that kind of screwed me over. But hey, at least you're back to hear me and rant on for probably another 20 minutes on a movie. That tends to be why you guys come, I think. If you don't worry, I'm healthy now. It's just one of those things where it's like, in normal society, you are a completely healthy individual, but for whatever reason, in the Army, we won't let you have this issue. So, I don't want to get into my medical history on the site or on the internet here. Sorry, but I have more details in the other video, because we're here to talk about John Carter. A movie which is now being heralded as the biggest box office bomb of all time, losing roughly 200 million, actually a little less than that. It probably won't be the 200 million mark. It'll make a few more million before it leaves theaters. But still, it's being touted as the biggest bomb of all time, and one of the first films I saw when I got back, because I did want to see this film when I first saw it advertised, or at least knew what it was. And I have to say, this film is so not deserving of the title of biggest box office bomb of all time. It really doesn't deserve this. There's been so many other films that have actually made money and are completely horrible. Take your pick. Looking at you, Twilight. Hell, even the Michael Bay films were way, the Transformers Michael Bay films. The Rock is still awesome. But, yeah. It's frustrating. It's frustrating to see a movie that you went to and enjoyed and had fun seeing it, and it had a followable plot. It had decent special effects. There's some stuff you can nitpick with it, but overall it's an acceptable film. One that I enjoyed and was hoping actually to even see a sequel. I know that ain't happening now. And to see that kind of just lead to this kind of disaster of a film, just makes you feel sad for the industry. That you have a genuine decent film here and it doesn't get any traction. And there's probably a lot of people to blame for this fiasco, which I will get into in a second. I probably should talk, before getting into the stuff that happened behind the scenes and why I think this film failed to succeed. I should probably get into whether the film is good or bad and why it is good or bad, after all. Unlike a lot of reviewers out here on YouTube, I do not just say, this film was good, awesome, go see it. I try to articulate the reasons why I enjoyed a movie, or did not enjoy a movie. That's why my reviews go on longer. We go in for a little deeper analysis so you get a sense of why I thought a movie was good or bad, and hopefully that should tell you whether you liked it, or if you've already seen the film, whether I'm agreeing with you, whether you're hearing stuff that, oh yeah, I kind of thought that too, but I didn't articulate that way. We'll go into my whole philosophy of why I do these long reviews. This is a video in and of itself. Let's get into John Carter. Now, I have not read Edgar Rice Burroughs' original novels. In fact, one, I was in basic training in the lead up to this movie, and the only thing you're allowed is a book of religious significance, and I am not exactly praying at the altar of Edgar Rice Burroughs. So, only a lot of Bible, basically, or Quran, or Torah, etc., etc. So I couldn't read that. I was aware, though, of the franchise. I think anyone that's is into sci-fi should be aware of this series, because this is really like one of the grand poppies of modern science fiction. Yeah, you have Jules Verne and such in the 1800s, kind of really establishing science fiction. And then, of course, you have classics like War of the Worlds and stuff that really also helped kick in science fiction. But this is really one of the first books where you go to another planet. So really, when it comes to really interacting with aliens and the idea of introducing alien cultures and stuff, really comes back to this Warlord of Mars, Princess of Mars, John Carter of Mars, this Mars series of books that Edgar Rice Burroughs wrote. It's such the grand poppy of science fiction, especially modern science fiction, in that the whole spaceships, alien planets. It's really the genesis for all of that stuff. That one of the things I've seen a lot of people kind of complain with this film has been, oh, there's an arena scene in there, and people keep on pointing to Attack of the Clones and such. The kind of plot of the warring tribes on planets. Really, there's a ton of different elements that seem stereotypical, but they are stereotypical because this series invented them. Star Wars has been ripping off Edgar Rice Burroughs for the past 30 years. So when we see stuff in its original form, sometimes it looks unoriginal, when really you are seeing the actual first ideals. Because, as I said, I have not read the books, but from a lot of the reviews and the stuff I've read online, these are actually fairly accurate to the book. There's obviously been some embellishments. Edgar Rice Burroughs himself is a character, where his John Carter is made to be his uncle, and they're basically doing the whole... You see this sometimes when they turn a book into a movie, is they make it that the author is actually not creating these stories, he's actually just writing down something from real life. You see this done with the Sherlock Holmes, where they're somehow all the Sherlock Holmes tales are really taken from the notes of Watson or something. So there's obviously been some embellishments there. There's been some updating of stuff. There's been the adding of clothes, which I'll get into that on the artistic side. But there has been a lot of complaints, as I said before, about unoriginality. You really have to consider this is, the grand poppy, so a lot of concepts and stuff that were really original. I mean, really, the entire thing was very original. Have been degraded a bit, but I think this goes to what I call the exception rule, the originality exception rule. If something becomes, shall we say, standard fare, and you would normally criticize something for being standard fare, if it's based on the original work that made it popular, I always give an exception. I will not criticize something that actually started a trend for having that trend-setting stuff. So I'm never going to complain that the Colonial Marines and Aliens are the stereotypical Space Marines. No, because Aliens kind of established that whole thing. Halo and everyone else ripped them off. But I digress. Let's get into the actual plot of this story. I'm not going to just give a recap of the entire plot. I think by this point you've probably heard a synopsis or two online. Basically, though, it's going to be, you have John Carter, ex-Confederate soldier, lost family during war, gets sucked up to Mars, finds out how to walk. That's just a hilarious, pretty funny scene. Not exactly scientifically accurate, but hey. Neither is being able to breathe on Mars. Gets sucked up to Mars, picked up by a green, relatively primitive tribe, and finds Princess, wants to bone Princess. They go on a journey, discover a secret, mysterious group of religious dudes decide they don't like him. Action ensues. Actually, you could tell that the monk guys, the Therns, are the bad guys immediately when you see that they are played by the first Thern you see is played by Mark Strong. You're going, oh, bad guys. That makes it easier. It's kind of sad that you can pick up on exactly who's the good guys and who's the bad guys by just who Mark Strong is. What else should I say? The plot is followable, though. Everything seems to make sense. There's no massive plot holes. There are some plot holes, and I think that it's probably either... It does feel like about a half hour has been cut out of this movie, but this movie is already very long, so it feels like a half hour. Somewhere it was cut out, and probably more towards the beginning, probably for pacing. Maybe not a full half hour, who knows? But it does seem like there was more to this movie that was cut out. That would probably maybe explain some of the minor plot hole stuff, but it's really, compared to a lot of crap, I mean, every movie has plot holes. Real life has plot holes. But it's very followable. You get the plot. The only thing that will really confuse people, I think, is the terminology. This movie does follow the books, and therefore it does throw a lot of new vocabulary at you. You know, the Martians have, all of them have their different races, they have the cities, they have terms for all their stuff. They have their own religious groups. They have their own set of names for the planets. So they really go through a lot of the terminology very quickly, and it's easier to do when you're in a book and you're reading it, and they can spend a page or two explaining stuff, which in reading time can take, depending on how fast of a reader you are, maybe a minute less for a lot of people, but for some people even longer. But it goes at your own pace, and you're able to. It's easier to take in a new terminology when you're reading stuff than it is when they're talking exposition. So for a lot of people, I think it will get, or not maybe a lot of people, but for some people it will get confusing at times when you're reading, or when you're watching this movie and it's being thrown to terminology very quickly. I didn't have that big of a problem with it. I think the biggest thing was, really, I kept on forgetting the name whenever they mentioned the bad guy's city. I kept on forgetting what they called that. I still forget what they called it. It was a weird name. But the names and stuff are all very purposefully alien. Credit to John Rice Burroughs for at least thinking of this type of stuff. Hey, this is why this guy was a great writer. Apologize if my throat's a little sore. It's coming into allergy season, and I was already a little sick, so. So the plot is easy to follow. The performances are fairly good. There's no bad performance. I was just like, oh, really? Some people have been trying to criticize Taylor Kitsch. I think that's how you pronounce his name. I don't know. Trying to criticize Gambit. That's what he is. He's Gambit. For his performance, he did fine. His performance was not bad. Not bad at all. Neither was Lynn Collins. She did a very good Dejah Thoris. Really one of the first. You want to talk about original stuff. Kind of having that strong female sci-fi character. It started with Dejah Thoris. Like I said, I have not read the books, but I am very aware because of just how much of an origin they are for all science fiction. I have, even before I knew there was a movie coming out, I had gone on and at least read the Wikipedia articles on them because they had been cited by so many people, the books themselves. So I was somewhat at least familiar with the franchise, which I think would help me. But so I know stuff like that. And actually, ironically, she was Silver Fox. And we have basically the two main leads here all came from X-Men Origins Wolverine. Bit of movie trivia to throw you. Moving on from the plot, I really, really like the visual style. I really like this kind of early pulp style of what nobody really knew what science and space was like. So you had this time period in the 20s, the 30s, even into the 40s a tiny bit, a little before, where people really didn't know space. They knew enough to know that there might be aliens and stuff, but people really could go wild with what alien planets were like. And so you would always have these weird bits where they would show aliens still wielding swords, but they had flying ships and stuff. And I love it. I mean, I'm a huge fan. I look over to my DVD collection on my left here, and I have the 1980s Flash Gordon. Actually, the 80s Flash Gordon is, I think, a very interesting companion or comparison to John Carter here, because looking at something from that same era, not quite, but failed miserably, but it was still well remembered and is played today and is fondly remembered today. And I think that's going to be John Carter's future. Hopefully, though, it'll be more like I don't know. I was about to say hopefully it'll be more like Dune because I think Dune is a little bit more popular than Flash Gordon, but Dune is really trippy. Dune is liked for different reasons. Uh, Flash Gordon is a fun movie. John Carter here is a fun movie, not as campy. It does take itself serious enough. So I think it's going to be an interesting. I think it's going to be to compare. I think Dune, Flash Gordon, and John Carter. I think will be to find those sci-fi films that are failed at first but succeeded later on for different reasons. Dune for being so weird, Flash Gordon for its campness, John Carter for just being a missed opportunity. But this whole style I love it. I love how they have the alien world's design. It's different enough. It looks very original. And it's original because it's not being based on any hard science. Luckily this is at a time when people weren't really that sure if Mars was uninhabited. People were swearing they saw canals on Mars. So there was a real serious thought that, hey, Mars probably actually has people. We have no idea how we would base that, how you would fly around. When this book was written, the original, flight was still a very brand new concept. So the idea of creating ships that would fly on light did not sound completely stupid to them. Actually, I'm kind of saying that this movie doesn't have hard sci-fi, but at the time it was very much like one of those hard science fiction films. Or not hard science fiction books, I should say. It was basically as best as Edgar Rice Burroughs could gather on how stuff would operate. We're going back to a time where they barely had an electrical grid. Lights were a rare, light bulbs were a fairly rare commodity. A lot of people still used candle lights when he first wrote these books. So I really like that it really means that they're not bounded by hard sci-fi like we are today. They're really able to go crazy with stuff. And you know what? Considering I've seen a lot of positive talk about this movie, a lot of people that actually saw the movie said they love it, which tells me that the audience that does see it gets this type of, you don't have to do hard science fiction. You can just go and create crazy worlds again. Hell, look at Star Wars. And tell me you can't do that a bit. Star Wars has a lot of people try to argue that Star Wars is actually fantasy and not sci-fi. I disagree, but you also can kind of see by this basis and how these worlds are why John Carter represents that era of when science fiction and fantasy actually were very closely tied. It wasn't until the 50s till they really kind of got separated. If I were to say one thing about the design, as much as I love it, John Carter, at least the pulp comics and art that was made around it in the 30s and 40s and into the 50s, I would have loved to have better representation from that. And what I mean by that is there was even in the books it is described as the Martians don't really wear any clothes except for some basic armor and sachets and stuff, and it's a really cool look actually. It's very 300-like. It's an aesthetically badass look. It's a Disney film, which is why they didn't do that. And I'm not saying, I want to see titties on the screen. I'm not trying to be all sexist. It's a very fascinating, it's a savage look for a savage world type of deal. Only thing I would have liked to see a little bit more, I understand it's a Disney film. And what I mean by a Disney film, it's a Disney film that they actually put Disney's name on, so they get cautious. Disney itself, as a company, really doesn't care. Disney, produces films that, they have Miramax, which will put out hard R movies. It's just that when Disney puts its actual logo on it, they get very family friendly, it must be. Even though you can have tons of blue alien blood. Oh well. So that's the one thing I would have enjoyed a little bit more. Apologies there. Would have enjoyed it a little bit like that, but it's fine. If you weren't aware of the artwork that really inspired that whole period of pulp art, and that's kind of why I wish it was a little bit more like that. They did do a fair enough job with the costumes. It does have that savage look to it. They are basically wearing his harnesses and stuff. That is based on from descriptions in the book from what I've read. So it does have that savage look to Mars. Mars isn't very red though. When you see it, it's kind of clear that they went out to the deserts and like of probably California or wherever they probably went, Morocco, Mexico, whatever, to film. Getting a little tired here, but I do have to talk about now. Now that I've talked about why I like the film, we got to talk about why this film did not work in the theaters. Now, from what I've read, again from other people's reviews, not the professional reviews, who basically once they see something's failing, they go, "Well, I knew that it was going to fail because I am a smart critic." Not the reviews from that. Just forum posts all over, comments, and even other more, shall we say, reliable reviewers. A lot of people actually, it's one of those cases, the people that actually went to go see this thing enjoyed the hell out of it. Not everyone, of course, you're going to have one of those few exceptions, but the overwhelming majority of people, as small as they are, that saw this film really liked it. So that tells me this isn't a case of a movie that failed because people saw it and then told people, "Don't go to see this movie. No, this is bad." No. People are trying to get people to see this film. Part of the reason why I'm making this video is to encourage you to go and actually watch it. No, the failure, I think, was behind the scenes. There was two things that hit this thing. One, you have a very inexperienced director, and a director's job is not just to point the camera and get performances out of the actor. He is an administrator of an entire process. It's not, a lot of times you think the producers do that, but really the directors have a lot of control over how stuff is being done. And from what I've read, the director on this really lost control of the production. Stuff went over budget, and I think the producers failed to kind of put on some controls. They failed to kind of step in and go, okay, this guy is not very good at overseeing the over process with the budget. You needed a closer observation from the producers. Did not happen here though. And I mean, this guy has produced successful films in the past. He was, a co-director of Bug's Life. He did Finding Nemo. He did WALL-E. Except A Bug's Life, Finding Nemo, and WALL-E were animated films. He didn't have to worry about a props department. He didn't have to worry about getting extras, creating stages and stuff. We're worrying about weather or other things ruining your shots. So, I mean, yeah, he's done smaller films, short films. Nothing to really help prep you, though, for overseeing something like this. I mean, even in his other works that he's done, it's all been animated stuff. So to go from animation, even with a big budget, to having to do a live-action film like this, it's an incredibly hard task to just make that transition. And I think that's what drove up the budget on this thing into the $200 million marker. Because when you look at it, you kind of think that it doesn't look like, it looks maybe like it should have been a $150 million film. So you can kind of see with that there was probably a loss of just a ton of money being wasted because of that. Also, if he's only directed animation, you might have also had some problems with getting the performances out of the actors you want in the shot. Voice acting is very different. Well, I mean, it's related, but it's still different than acting in front of the camera. Now, that's one of the minor things. That's one of the things that drove up the price of the cost of the movie a little bit. The other thing the bigger thing that I think they failed completely on was the advertisement for this movie. The original trailer was acceptable enough, but they never really followed up on explaining shit. And people just didn't. The general audiences didn't know how to interpret this movie. It's just called John Carter, and it has got a weird stuff. Is this a fantasy film? Is this I don't know what this is. This looks weird, and I remember hearing that when I first saw the trailer in the theaters, and at first I was like, oh, this is just a teaser trailer, you know. They're just putting it. They're trying to get that. What was that about? I don't know. That, you know, stuff like Inception started to build up. But there's that type of marketing can so easily fail, especially if it really, really confuses people what the hell's going on. They really need it in the marketing department to make this clear. First off, they shouldn't have called it John Carter. If they had called it John Carter of Mars, people would have at least got the sense this is some sort of science fiction. They probably should have also emphasized more that this is based on Edgar Rice Burroughs' book from way back in the day. So people would have got the sense that, hey, this is an old school science fiction story. Oh, okay. I get the idea. It's like, you know, way back when my grandfather used to watch whatever, the Flash Gordon series type stuff. Okay, I get that. I get the idea. Buck Rogers-y type stuff. Alright. People would have gotten that. It would have really helped solved a lot of the problems with it. I think there's a lot of people having no idea what the movie was about. And just going, no, well, I'm just not going to bother. It also showed way too early in the movie-going season. This movie should have probably came out in June or late May, back when people are like already set to go to the movies almost like every week. Not to be the starter of the movie season, which apparently Hunger Games has taken over. No. John Carter really should have been in the middle of the series. It didn't have enough oomph to really get people to want to go to the movies. I think it needed to ride on the natural high that is the summer movie season. Yeah, because if you look at films like Prometheus that's coming out, they seem to be aware enough that we can't start off a movie season with Prometheus. It's better to put it in the middle of the movie going summer, to where people must know, hey, if they're promoting this, it's going to be big. It must be a good film. That's not always that always doesn't pan out, but that is a big psychology, a mass psychology of putting films out. You know, Prometheus, they're not taking the risk on and putting it out early. They want to wait till there's this momentum of people hitting up the theater every week, because a lot of people are not going to get it. At least the advertisements, because they have to keep stuff vague. Even though Prometheus, they've released their second trailer now, and they explain it. You know, they really go into the detail. Okay, we're going to this planet to find the origins of human life that we think is related to aliens. We go there, we find weird crap that's probably going to kill everybody. We have to stop it. They didn't have that with John Carter, and that really falls on Disney. They had a problem with their advertising executives were switching. They were changing executives right when this movie's advertisement stuff was being set up. So you have one guy that's leaving who doesn't really care, and another guy that's coming in who is trying to get settled in. So this movie was completely neglected. They really should have done stuff differently. Oh well, I'm hoping this movie becomes, if it's going to become anything, it's this year's Cowboys and Aliens, where it's the one film that was actually good but people didn't see, but hopefully will be remembered fondly. You know, there's plenty of films out there that were considered bombs when they first came out, but have thus become classics. Hopefully that's his case. You know, hopefully it'll be like Cowboys and Aliens still hasn't transitioned to that, but you know, a lot of people since we got the DVD have been trying to show Cowboys and Aliens to as many people, and the more people that see it actually go, hey, this movie actually was pretty good. I'm hoping that'll happen. That is what will happen with John Carter. Ironically, both John Carter and has Cowboys and Aliens in it, so maybe that's a related thing. I don't know. We'll find out. I've rattled on for about a half hour now. But that's why this channel exists, for long rants. That's why I am back to do. Unfortunately, couldn't do the other thing, so you guys find me back here, ranting on about movies. And now it is time to conclude this podcast. So stay tuned. I think the next one I might see Hunger Games. I might not. It's just something that's not a for what sorry. For whatever reason, it's just something that's not appealing to me right now. I certainly will see Wrath of the Titans. Just curious what they're going to do now that their hands are free. I might criticize it like I did the last one. Who knows? Really, we're waiting on summer movie season, and I'll probably be doing a review a week again. Well, signing off for now, YouTube. I am back. I might put up some other videos when I have the time. See you later.